Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Friday AI with Phil show. You may know me. I am the Progress Community Manager, Nicole Goldstein. Nice to see you.
Hi,
My
everyone.
and Alfred,
Go
you
ahead,
go.
Phil.
No, you go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Hanal. I work on the product marketing house of things in progress. I work with Phil daily, gaining insights on AI and applying them in our organization. So, hi, everyone.
Awesome. I am the sleep deprived mad scientist that works in our product marketing team and also an AI strategist that likes to go out and talk to people, conferences and customers and partners about kind of how people are using AI and maybe some suggestions on how we can bring that back to the business, our product, as well as then sharing best practice with what we do. Saving the best for last, we have a special guest with us this time. So, Kate, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Pendarvis. I'm the VP of Marketing at Progress here, and my role has recently been shifting. And I originally was leading up our digital and creative teams, but now really changing and evolving my role into leading our marketing's AI Center of Excellence and our creative brand as well. So I'm here and excited to talk about what we're doing within marketing, where we're evolving, and lots of future things to come and what we're looking to do. So thank you for having me.
All right.
So, as everyone knows who's been watching the show, first we're going to kick off with a lot of stuff going on in the AI news today. We have lots of articles that we'll be referencing and talking about, but in our YouTube description area, we'll make sure that we include them all. So, if our little minuscule dive in isn't enough, you can dive deeper when you look at the links in the comments. So, kicking us off, there was a Wall Street Journal article on kind of the general availability of AI and the connection of AI tools driving more adoption. And what we're seeing is kind of OpenAI and Anthropic launching these things that are kind of like almost consultancy firms saying like not only hey here's AI, but hey, let me help you usher this into your business and help you optimize this for your business. You guys saw that article too, right?
Yes, we did. Yeah, saw that during the week. And I think there's some like takeaways that you can do quite quickly with it, right? There's these guys have access to more data than any
God.
human process, right? Okay, so when they're making a shift or whether they're making an investment, probably a good idea to listen, right? Um, the financial services, obviously, they're using their tools to a degree, but there may be an underutilization that they see as an opportunity there. So that's backed up with OpenAI's recent signals release from their B2B research and kind of how people are using AI. They can see them using ChatGTP, right, which is the consumer facing product that we all know, love, and hate, right? But they're not seeing the usage in the API, right? So it's like number one with the ChatGTP users, but in API users across the industry, it's like number six. So if they can shift just 10% of those users across to the API, that's where they're going to start making more money because that's where really they're making their money, right? And it's a maturity signal as they start to understand how they're doing this. And I think it's something that we can all take away and look at kind of where's the opportunity in AI and kind of use that as a signal to say, okay, there's something going on here. Maybe we should be looking at this as well.
And just
So,
to add to that, I think that this feels less
mm,
like here's an AI tool and good luck, and more like we're coming in to your business, understanding the workflows, helping to implement the AI where it can actually create value for a lot of these organizations. Phil, to add to that, I think one of the things I was thinking was a lot about when we talk about experimentation to implementation, like pilot to production. Would you consider this like a bigger sign that AI is moving from that experimentation to implementation phase on a rapid scale now?
yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's reports and loads of articles about like the ROI being realized within AI now. In fact, there was article I read the other day is that we're moving beyond the bubble, right? So we are we're now starting to see where these can be practically implemented and deliver an outsized return on investment in the space. And so that's really interesting. I think there's some knock-on effects that's going to be had. Like, you kind of talk to them about being consultancy firms. And traditionally, one take, and I'm not saying I agree with this take, but one take is you hire a consultancy firm, you can blame them if it goes wrong. Right? Now you can blame the AI if it goes wrong. Right?
Why don't we blame both? Let's be equal opportunity blamers. Like,
you can't fire the AI though, right? There's a piece, the accountability piece is really an important factor.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't fire the AI. In fact, you hired the AI, and I was at an industry event a while back, actually, funny enough, in financial services, right, looking at like regulatory tech. And I was saying that when you talk about accountability, you can't blame the AI. It's whoever prompted the AI, who designed the AI, what guardrails did you put in there, and actually not just in there but around the tool itself, because there's a whole host of reasons why you should be looking at that more holistically.
But that's some of the problem right now too, right, Phil? That everybody has access to things, but we all don't know how to do that or how to formulate those guardrails or those security practices, because we all, depending on what role you're in, haven't had to do that before. And AI makes it seem easy. But if we don't know how to do it, that's where the agency could add value to come in and give you those structures. Or you need to lean on your developer or IT folks that have done that for years and have those detailed pieces, because it seems like you might have it, but you probably don't.
No, and I don't. And there is also a transformation that needs to go on in those teams as well, right? To adopt, learn, understand how these function in the enterprise. But there are ways of starting that journey, and none of this is perfect, right? Because we're all new to this, right? These tools are brand new and they're being deployed at scale, right? And sometimes in some pretty sensitive kind of areas. But by utilizing the tools available, by creating kind of platforms within your business where you can put AI tools on top of those platforms, but they can govern and secure the data within the platform before it even goes to there. That's one layer of security, right? That can scale. You don't need to, in marketing, need to understand necessarily those particular features or functions. That is where IT can help you and come in and take the established practices of securing that data. What you need to understand really is how to leverage the tool as the tool is, right? So don't try and put a square brick in a round hole. Right? Don't try and stop what AI delivers, which is an abstraction of the technology for the end user. So if you are developing like applications or services, then the user, you want them to be engaging with this and understanding what it can create and what it can't and what it needs help with and so on and so forth. They don't want to have to worry about all that security. You should be providing them a platform for that security. That includes the data security. It also includes an understanding of how you're classifying and connecting that data and expressing the language of the business to that data. And then it also requires you to understand, how do I take my policies and procedures and any external governance that's required, and how do I operationalize that so that you can create a democratic access to the data that's needed to run these business applications. And you shouldn't be looking at trying to do this in a point solution, because all of that work you'll then have to do again for the next solution. That's why we talk about have a platform in your business that you can build this and then build those applications.
So we're talking a lot about data. And one of the questions that we've been working through, just in our own progress world is how do we structure our data to make it AI ready? So we've been working in certain teams to reduce redundancies, to eliminate, things that may have stale dated or need some updating and things like that. And I know McKinsey Technology did this whole article on building the foundations of agentic AI at scale. And they were talking about where to focus first. So doing your workflows first, your most high value workflows, and saying what data is there, and let's start there. But data is everywhere. We store everything. I have documentation. I've worked at Progress for 8 years. I have stuff that I did when I first got here, totally different job role, totally different everything. No one's going to ask me for it, but I got it.
And there's all different types of data too, because when I think data, my first mind goes to our business data, the metrics, the analytics, the leads, all that stuff. But then if you also think about data, when it comes to AI, that's also your assets, your creation, your words. So my banner ads or an ebook or a PDF, those are all data points too that you want AI to be able to gather and surface. And we don't have that all organized consistently or regularly per team or per whatever. Who knows, if I went off and created my own asset. So that is for sure an area to focus on.
Yeah. And so the first thing, they are correct to look at the workflows in your business and identify. In fact, actually, this is what we've been talking about with our customers and partners, and in some of the blogs and papers that we've been putting out, is yes, identify the valuable workflows in your business, but also take a understanding of where your business is and where certain functions are with that as well, right? So to say what tools would benefit them the most. We talk about AI and it's kind of like, oh, I've got this great tool, but if I have to move a mountain to get to that tool, then that's not a great tool, right? Meet the function where they are in their journey, and it will make it a lot easier for people. When we talk about data specifically for supporting these initial kind of workflows and use cases, is start small. You don't have to boil and should not try and boil the ocean, right? You should not go into your business and say, I need to connect everything everywhere all at once, right? It's not going to happen. You are going to be still sat there 3 years later going, Phil, it didn't work. And I'm like, yeah, of course it didn't, right? You should say, this is the MVP of the product I want to release. Here's the minimal viable data that is needed to support that release. Okay, let's put that into the platform. Let's connect that. Let's add rules around it. Let's know we're not going to probably start off with really highly sensitive data. We're not going to start off with maybe PII stuff or financial services stuff or things like that in that initial use case, because things can go wrong, right? When we're experimenting, that's the whole point of the experiment, because actually sometimes that we learn why, right? Start off with, and this is why we see one of the biggest use cases, like over 70% of organizations are using marketing as a area where they can test it. Because in my role, I want everybody to know what we're saying. I want everybody everywhere all at once to know what we're saying, right? So
high goals.
Most of my day, hey, let's shoot for the stars. I end up with a big stick, all that stuff, right? But the whole point of it is to use data that you there's less kind of worry about it, right? So that people can more freely experiment, and you can take those lessons and learn that understanding and apply it to the next use case that may have a better may have more sensitive information, right? But what you're doing in the initial case is setting up guardrails, rules, and actions that persist in your data platform. So the next use case is informed by that, and that contracts its time to development, right?
So
Uh,
we talk a lot about guardrails on this show, but I think we need to talk about them in a little bit more detail because there are times where the guardrails you put in place fail. So there was an article, Cursor deleted an entire production database, like, and it was given very explicit direction, like in the article, it like put in quotations like never do this. It actually had the F word in it, like never do this. And then the AI did it, and it apology lettered afterward. Like, hold on, I printed it out. It said, I violated every principle I was given. I guessed instead of verifying. I ran a destructive action without being asked. I didn't understand what I was doing before doing it. Much better than my son apologizes, I have to say, but the stakes are a little higher. So what are we doing wrong when it comes to setting those guardrails?
so I don't want to throw Cursor under the bus because it was Claude that did it, right?
Oh, my bad.
I don't want to throw them under the bus, right? But they weren't guardrails, right? They were suggestions, right? They were, please don't do this, Mr. AI, right? They were in no way a guardrail system or a security system or an active control that stops them from taking that action, because all of their actions in an LLM system are a roll of the dice. It is a weighted dice, right? But it's weighted to get you the results that you want. However, that can also land on a different number, right? So they did not set up the system correctly. They didn't understand what they were asking it to do. They were using it on a production database system, right? And they were going, yeah, fine, just fire and repeat, right? And so there's no way in the world. I was not surprised when I read the article and like looked at that. It's a good headline, right? Great headline. Claude deletes a database in 9 seconds or whatever, right? Like, great headline. People click on it. Yeah.
I applaud Pocket OS for sharing that story, because if I deleted my production database, I don't think I'd want to share that with anybody. Like, that sucks. But they shared the story so we all could learn, and we can talk about it here today. So I totally applaud them for sharing that. Much appreciated. So we all can learn from it.
Yeah, and that's the great thing I think about the AI ecosystem as a whole. There is a lot of collaboration that goes on, and a lot of sharing of kind of understanding and how these tools because we're all trying to learn, right? But they needed, and everyone needs, a deterministic guardrail system that goes alongside and or encapsulates the AI, right? So if it sends that instruction outside of the LLM, there needs to be a wall there that is external from the LLM that says yes or no, right? And that should be based on a rule that says, okay, we understand this instruction is coming from the LLM. Okay, check through what the LLM is allowed to do, the actions it's allowed to do. No, it is not allowed to delete our production database. So it should have had a stop there. And that's what caused the issue.
So
Now,
when
we
I
talk
first
about
heard
that
this,
very sorry, go ahead, Hannah.
sorry, Nicole, go ahead. Oh no, I just said when I first heard this story, I actually pinged Phil with the article, and I was like, oh my God, an LLM went rogue. Like, it didn't do the suggested text or prompt that it was given. And there was some guardrails that was put in place. And then Phil and I talked about it, quickly realized my assumption was that the guardrails were in place around this systems around the LLM, not only in the LLM itself, right? So within Claude itself saying, hey, don't delete anything, don't access anything. And so I think that's something that if I had read the article first, I would have thought too was, oh, it was given a specific guardrail. Why didn't it follow it? I have it set up in my personal Claude, my personal ChatGPT, like, don't do this, don't do that, but it's also about how much access the systems around the LLM have. And I think that Phil was referring to that earlier in the podcast, was how much governance, what rules do you have around the systems around the LLM that is feeding the LLM that data? So what access does it have to your data? What access does it have to your personal information, customer information in this case, that it had access to? So I think that's important. And then when I took a second look at that article, I kind of understood what went wrong from setting up the LLM and connecting it to the data.
I get what you say about prompts being suggestions. So in this case, like, the never do this rule was really part of the prompt, right? Like, never do this.
Well,
Like, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, it would normally be probably be a series of different prompts at different parts of the system. So you would probably have a pre-prompt system prompt that says, don't take these actions. You might then include it in a prompt itself. Don't take these actions. You might even have a skill or an MCP server or whatever it says, right? Please don't take these actions. But if your entire stack is governed by the AI, then those are just strong suggestions. You need a brick wall around your AI with a door that opens when you want it to open. If those bricks are made of marshmallows, don't be surprised if it gets through it, right? Like, it's that type of thing. They are strong suggestions. They're still suggestions.
How do you build that brick wall? Like, what is that? So you say it, and I kind of understand what you mean, but I don't really practically understand, how do you do that? So you put your guardrails within the tool that you're using. Are you saying that brick wall is just never connect it to a production database, so then it doesn't have the option? Is it like that kind of? No, it's something. It's like another version.
So you have to use a deterministic system to get deterministic results, right? So, and when I talk about a deterministic system, what I'm really saying is like a rules-based system. Those rules are crafted by the human beings and the subject matter experts who know what level of access to give individuals or tools or AI access to different systems and the actions that they're allowed to take. So, like, for instance, in our platform, we've got like a role-based access. We've got query-based access controls baked into the platform. We have lineage and governance and provenance of those actions when they're taken. We have rules that are baked in that express how data is interpreted and classified and where it can be used. We have other rules that talk around the policies and what can be done. Those aren't like suggestions. Those are hard and fast rules that you put your LLM either together with, on top of. And so when that makes a call that says, I'm going to take this action, it should go through the deterministic system first to give you the correct outcome. If you just allow it to directly connect without that guardrail in place, that's when these actions become unmanaged, ungoverned, and really unintelligible, right? Because we still don't know how the AI makes the decisions it makes. And so do you want to put something that is essentially a black box that is going to run your business? No. Because if you do, actions like this occur. And look, own goal, shoot themselves in the foot, deleted a thing. Customers unhappy, so on and so forth, right? If it was in healthcare and it was delivering oxygen, if it is in a firing system for the government, if it is in a financial transaction system and says, I'm going to buy all of these shares in insert, like, I don't know, this year's Kodak or whatever, whoever's going to go bust this year, right? That's when you've got a problem, right? And that's when you should not be using these systems like this. They are incredibly powerful and they do amazing things, but you have to understand how these work, not in isolation of the tool itself, but in the ecosystem of tools you're trying to connect to it. And then you put guardrails. It's just another employee. I can't go and grab financial information in our because I don't have access to it, right? I can't go and export like all of the names in our database because I'm not allowed to take that action, right? And it's the same with AI. You consider it to be another employee, and so what would you do with that employee? You teach it the policies, okay, programmatically express the policies to the AI so it understands it, but also then build those into your data platform so it tries to take action. It can't, right? It isn't
That
an
has
easy task, right? But it is
Mhm.
absolutely necessary.
And I think just to emphasize what Phil's saying, that has to be embedded within your data platform layer. That is something that needs to be when the LLM is calling out to your database, your data source, it needs to, those business rules need to say, is the agent allowed to see this data? Is it allowed to access it? What data can I share? Those are things a human needs to write, like rules that need to be provisioned by a organization.
Yeah.
And I
It's
think
great.
McKinsey,
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say McKinsey put it really well in terms of layers because I was reading up on like basically Kate, my same question was like, how do you build this in? And it was like the first, I was thinking it in terms of layers, right? So the first layer is that data coming in. So this could be like customer data. This could be, they were sharing a retail example. So it was like customer data, product data, web behavior, all of that. So before AI uses it, that data needs to be clean, tagged, tracked and protected. And then the second layer was the platform that connects that data. So where is the company? This is where the company brings in that data from different systems together. So the AI is not working from disconnected sources. So that's that layer. And then the third layer is the meaning layer. So I think this is what we all know as the semantic layer. So helping your AI understand what that data really means, how it's connected to different things, like a customer could be connected to account, a buyer, a member. So it relates to the same world person and relationship depending on that business context that you've set up. And then that fourth layer is your governed access. So now you have all this connected data view. Where is this? This is where the system decides what the AI agent is allowed to see. So what access can I give it to customer information, tags on specific customer information I may have, all of that. And then the final layer is where the AI shows up in that workflow. And this is where the agent kind of answers a customer, builds a campaign, maybe does a recommendation, creates a forecast, a dashboard, whatever it needs to do. It's being prompted.
Yeah. All of that, by the way, needs to follow in that workflow. All of those rules and understanding and meaning and guardrails and everything like that should be a part of the entire workflow, not just from the input, but also governing the output from the LLM as well, right? Or the action that the LLM takes based on that prompt. That's for two reasons. One, it means then that the security and governance and controls will travel with the user's prompt into the LLM, right? And on the output, you can then capture that output and apply those same controls to that output that you want, because the LLM could still give away, if it's connected to like a customer information or proprietary information that you don't want it to share, right? And so you need to like be able to put that in and interrupt the kind of action or answer that the AI gives, and again have that validation loop in there. Am I sharing the right information? Is it asking for the right thing? Can it have access to this? So on and so forth. In that kind of process loop, and that's essentially like a retrieval augmented generation with governance and controls, with semantic search and knowledge graphs, right? All of this work that you have to do to make AI both operational, valuable, and trusted in your business. So
We
yeah,
we talk
that would be kind of
we
minimum.
we're really like we repeat all the time on this show that humans need to be in the loop because people are so afraid that like AI will do everything, no one needs me. But the thing we circle back on all the time is that like you need people in there checking the work, making sure things are set up correctly, and making sure that the production system doesn't get deleted. Um, Kate, we have you as our guest today to kind of speak for the marketing point of view. Like, how are you guys keeping humans in the loop when it comes to the marketing initiatives that you're putting together with leveraging AI?
And I'd also start it's also setting that strategic value. You need somebody to set the strategic vision to then what is AI actually doing in the output and that sort of thing. So we're organizing the teams. We're still thinking and putting it together, right? So right now I'm starting off and working on small initiatives and pilots where we can test out some of the use cases that we want to be doing. And we've been doing some of this, but exactly the articles that we were reading and talking about, we hit some walls with how do we connect it to data? How do we connect it to that next piece? We could only get it so far. And so the effort and the goals of my team is going to be how do we move beyond. I also saw the article, it was called the Gen AI paradox. How do we move beyond the little bits of efficiencies that we're doing every day? Like we're gaining efficiencies, but we're not seeing the valued outcome because we can't connect it to those next pieces. And so that's the first piece that I want to work on with my team and connect it through. And so we need people to figure that out. And Phil talking about that platform and the governance layer. The governance layer is a huge piece for people. The guardrails, the prompting, the testing, the validation, that's where people are going to be. And we also there's decisions that need to be made along the way. And so I'm not expecting, and I hope nobody's expecting, to have one marketing agent that's going to do all of marketing. We're going to have lots of little, maybe not little, I don't know if that's the right word, size-wise, but we're going to have specialized agents in certain pieces that will have checks and balances along the way and people in there to validate the decisions, check the work, make sure that we're following, back to your suggestions, make sure we are following the content guidelines, the security guidelines, those pieces that we need to make sure we're following. And then we're also applying our strategic direction, our competitive advantage pieces. So it's not all generalized. So those need to be put in there. So marketing's putting those in place. And we are trying to scale and move faster and, think about that from a marketing perspective. There's so much noise out there and we see it all the time. There's so much noise. How do you stand out? How do you have the moment to be there? You need to be everywhere all at once. I think that's a
just
movie
like
title,
Phil,
right? Isn't it?
There's
a movie title too. I feel like it keeps going through my mind. But we're thinking about that in marketing. And so then it's moving quickly and it's setting these up, these validation points in place. So the other thing I recently heard, me and my boss went to a Gartner briefing earlier this week, and a concept they had talked about was human in the loop and human on the loop. And I thought that was really, really interesting. So human in the loop is somebody that's still manually checking and validating along the way. And that's where we're at right now. And we need to be doing that because we're still learning. Mistakes are still happening. We're still failing fast, and that will continue for a little while. But ultimately getting to more of a state where there's a human on the loop, where you've set up your structure, and Phil, following the way you just laid out of having those deterministic checkpoints. Human on the loop is just verifying output along the way. They don't need to do those manual checks and approvals for some workflows. I don't think that we completely move to that in any specific way, but as we get more confident and trust and build that, you can start to get to that point too. So thinking about that and keeping that in mind is what we're looking at.
I want to take that to the third step, right? Which is actually where I think the ROI is going to be delivered, which is, okay, I've got my grounding, I've got my governance, I've got all of that in place. I've got my deterministic guardrails that are those human created rules. I then have this person that sits on top of those rules and making sure that along the way everything is kind of functional and things like that. But what it does, it then allows people to really take advantage of having this human and AI collaboration, right? And having freeing up a low-level task or low-level thinking to then abstract your own human ability to look beyond the data, to search for novelty in your approach, your delivery, your messaging, whatever it might be, that then elevates the content and the products and positioning and everything else outside of what you're capable of delivering today, because you get emails from people saying, "Hi Phil, can you review this, and can you have a look at this, and can you do that?" And it's like, guys, I trust you all, you're all very competent people, I'm sure it's fine, but no, Phil, have a look, right? So once we get people's confidence in these systems to deliver, that's when you're going to start seeing, and you're already seeing it in certain fields, right? So mathematics, chemistry, the biology, and the list kind of goes on. You're seeing people taking novel approaches and solving real world problems using AI to abstract this low level thinking, to then allow them to go, okay, holistically, what does this mean? Oh, okay, I've now just solved a 100-year math problem. I've now found more, genetic information than has ever been seen before. I've now cured this disease. I've built this new material. I have been able to create self-driving cars, and so on. The list goes on, right? I am an AI optimist with a tinge of realism, right, in terms of what it actually takes to deliver these things. In fact, I'm a human optimist. I believe over the long lens of time, humanity has got better. Long lens of time, not narrow lens of time, but the technology is a part of that improvement in our lives, and I think this is that third step of like really trusting the system, making it boring, right? Like, it should be boring. Who cares about all of these things? It's boring because it's already been created for you. You don't care about this, right? Making it, maturing your understanding of it, right? So maturing the use cases that you build on, going from like low kind of impact, but for valuable still, for like team level AI assistance, and then it's like departmental, and then it's like company wide. Then it's, oh, now I can use this for my customers as well to help them. And then building out the like you say, that human on the loop, so that the people are then going, okay, now I've got the time. And this is what I think is missing from the understanding. And actually, I just saw an article the other day, like China is going to make it illegal for you to fire people because of AI, right? I
Yeah, I saw
actually
that.
think that's a pro-human move, right? But I think it's a pro-human and AI move, by the way, right? Because there is expertise and knowledge in the human beings that exist in your business, whether they're starting their career and they're young and they're hungry and they want to make change and they are going to drive solving some of the real world challenges that we have today, or whether they're towards the end of their career and can offer insight and experience and knowledge sharing to those people that are coming through. If we can take away the modernity of some of the tasks that we have by having a trusted AI system, then we can then start collaborating and knowledge sharing and ideating at a level that I don't think we've been able to do it before in the past. And so, as you saw with the advent of women in education, the access of information on a global scale, the development of the internet, and now AI, these systems have all been around connecting this kind of one concept of a human intelligence, like raising what we're able to deliver, the level of innovation and transformation we've had in our society. I can take anyone from human history from 3,000, 10,000 years, and I can drop them in the 1600s, and they're going to go, oh, well, that's a big fancy wall. And oh, that's still a horse and a cart. That's a big fancy cart. I like that cart. The wheels around it, right? But they're not going to lose their minds. They're not going to go, this is insane. What are you doing? Right? They're just going to go, okay, yeah, this is cool. This is Tuesday. Right, awesome. If I
They
did
might
that
lose
with
their mind.
somebody,
They might lose their mind.
if I did that for somebody for 200 years ago, or even 100 years ago, right? People were riding horseback 100 years ago, right? The car still hadn't reached a lot of the world's population. And then I dropped them in today. They've got little people in screens. They've got access to all of human knowledge. They have robots delivering products, right? They have robot-looking dogs. Their minds are going to spin. They're going to be like, I'm completely out of space. And that's all because of this democratization of intelligence that we've had. And the AI is just another facet of that. Anyway, that's just a little bit of existential thought there on those topics. But
On your facets though, oh sorry, go ahead, Nal.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I think that what Phil's saying about the speed and efficiency that we've reached with AI is something I experience on a personal daily basis, because it's so much easier now, to go from creation or ideation to actually implementation, like, building a brief, a deck, or a campaign, and, being able to share that, being able to put the idea out in production than it was even like last year for me to do it, which is insane, right? It's 365 days. Like, who could have thought that so much could have changed in my own daily workflow with AI? And so I think I think about it all the time, how fascinating and how fast we're moving, but also the ability of your organization, the teams external to you, to be able to keep up with that change. And I think that's what a lot of part of educating yourself on AI, making sure you're using these tools, leveraging them to your best of capabilities, and what Kate's role will now be, right? Making sure we're able to leverage these tools in our workflows and our daily practices.
That's exactly right. And there's two other kind of pillars within my role and what we're focusing on in marketing that I also wanted to share, and it kind of ties to that. So I talked about the agentic flows and the operational pieces we're doing, but then there's also a whole focus and pillar on enablement and upskilling and training, because we're all at different levels at different points for whatever reason. You're going to have your people that are super advanced, that are spending all of their nights and weekends learning on their own. And then you have other people that maybe aren't, or you have somewhere in the middle, or someone only using the tools that are given directly within their workspace. Those are all okay, but we need to find a way to help guide and bring people along to share. Even the prompting piece, Phil, you mentioned earlier, ask AI to help with your prompting. Some people just don't think to do that because they hadn't worked that way. And that's just not how, we can help with a little guidance. We can help that and bring everybody up to a different level and a consistent level to getting more value out of these tools. So there's a whole enablement category. And then the third category is all of the external focus, the whole world and how our customers are buying, agents are buying, everything is changing there. So there's a whole awareness column, and I don't even know if it's just awareness, but focusing on what that external discoverability is for how we do our marketing. How we do marketing is changing. Why we're doing it isn't. And so that's really clear understanding. And so the how externally, but then the how internally. And so that's coming together. So those are the three categories. It's the discoverability phase of marketing. There's how we enable and train our employees, and then there's how we operate and do our work internally.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about this as well, like from a how do we kind of push people along? Because at the moment, there's pockets of innovation that are moving faster than the business can actually support it, right? And that's a natural thing, right? You've got people who are, like you say, spending the weekend like using AI tools and seeing what they can build and just experimenting and stuff like that, because that's the nature of who they are, right? But you've got other people who've been like, look, just give me a job and I'll do it. I promise you, I'll be good at it, and I'll do it every day. But I don't want to do it, right? And so I think about this as meeting your cohort of people that you're trying to address where they are, right? And that's a really an understanding or a diversification of maybe even tooling or how you present the tooling to them, right? They might just want a natural language interface that just asks you questions and says like, oh, do this, do that, then it generates stuff, right? Or they might be an architect and they want like a UI-driven way to build workflows that connect to systems that come with these guardrails already embedded in and MCP connectors and all of that. Or they might be your coders that are operating at the CLI view, right? That are happy to dive in and go through and code stuff and things like that. I think you need to democratize AI by meeting people where they are. I think there's some really good tools that can help in that. There's some recently that I've been really interested in, which is like the easiest way to do, like you call them Claude Cowork, Perplexity Computer, Codex for OpenAI, right? Really, they're an agentic harness on agents and AI tools that go underneath. They abstract the technical away from the individual so that they can get to the outcome quicker that they're trying to deliver. If you expect them to come down to your level, the CLI view, right, building out all these cool things and so on and so forth, that's not going to happen, right? And like the latest one was using, I think, Perplexity computers in Teams themselves. And I thought, that's great. Like, how many people use Teams, right? You imagine you could have that for Slack or whatever, but like you're just then in Teams and going, okay, take control of this, move this around, organize my diary for this week, find me a slot for this, right? And the agents are just going off and doing their things. Now, you built in guardrails and system things and like approvals and stuff like that with these tools. There's no issue with that, right? That human person isn't having to change the way that they're working in order to use the tool. The tool is adapting to a profile of person that comes the tool is trying to engage with, right? So whether it's in marketing or in finance or in engineering and development, it's the right tool for the right person, rather than saying, well, AI is great, it can do everything, but I've got to learn how to do that. Like, it's a big ask on people, and it's easier to meet them where they are rather than trying to drag them along to say, not only do you have to learn how this changes your role, but also you have to learn how to use this tool. And by the way, you're probably going to have to learn software engineering and God knows what else to go along with it. It's like, well, that's a big ask, right? So maybe like bring them along, and you'll find people that then want to learn software engineering or want to learn about things and stuff like that. But just by leveraging agentic actions in your business, not necessarily having to build those agents, but by going, I want to do this, it needs to deliver this, and it should be for this audience. And then they go out and go and do that. That is much more powerful, I think, a way of like enabling adoption for people. Like I say, I've got like an AI news scanner that goes out and kind of drags all these articles in for me, right?
So then you can share them with us.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't sit there and say everybody should build one of these things. Once a week, I generate a summary of those news articles, and then I send them to people where they are, right? And that means they could still get the insights from this. But I'm not telling them, oh, okay, you've got to go and build a load of skills in Claude, ground it in all of your data, make sure it does this, this, and this. Oh, and then you've got to then test it a million times to make it actually work. And then now you've got a product you can actually deliver. Because that's not scalable. That's not intuitive. And that's definitely not meeting where 99% of the world's population still are, by the way. We operate in a bubble. The bubble isn't the market. The bubble is like, we know quite a bit more than the average person about these AI tools. And so how do we kind of translate that to them and make it easier on them?
All right, so we're coming up on the end. We've got about 10 minutes left, so let's do our aha moments. So for those of you who are new to the show, we go around the room, the room, whatever this is, and what we've done with AI lately that was an aha moment for us. So let's go ahead and start with Hinal this week.
An aha moment, let me think. I tested Cowork, which I hadn't done. So that was an aha moment for me. I think one of the things that I did was create a deck. I'm in a part-time MBA program. So I leveraged it. We had done our entire brief, did a compelling case for one of our arguments within one of our classes. And I used it to create a brief within like less than 5 minutes, which, was all our work, all of our citations, everything that we used, but it had done it, less than 5 minutes. And what I liked about Cowork was along the way when I was prompting it asked me questions. So it didn't just go ahead and go off and do the final output, but it was like, who's your audience? Is this the format you would want the final output in? What's the color scheme? You know, what's your role within this presentation? What do you want me to highlight? So it took everything to account, and it made a final deliverable that would have taken me at least like, you know, an hour to do on my own, to kind of format, make sure it's in the right ready presentation format. But that was my aha moment of this week, actually. Yeah, it was this week.
Mine will be short, so I'll make myself go next. And everyone who pays attention to anything I put out knows that I'm a Luddite. I'm really trying hard to get into the AI thing, but I've used it in a unique way. So I had to give a presentation and I wanted to make it unique and interesting. So I asked AI, here's what I'm trying to present. What are some bullet items that I should make sure in this presentation? And it gave me the bullet points, right? And I said, that must be generic. That must be what everybody puts in their presentation. So I wrote an entire presentation refusing to use any of those bullet points. I made my entire presentation without talking about any of those common things. So an anti-pattern, if you will. But Kate, will go on to you because Phil always talks forever. He'll lead us out to the end of the show. So we're going to go with you next.
All right. So my aha moment this week, again, so I'm playing around with at Progress. We have Microsoft Co-work in frontier mode. So it's still early adoption phase. I do have access, which I'm very lucky to. But I was in my new role, I'm really digging into discovery with marketing. And I want to run a series of workshops with the different teams to see what I feel like there's a lot of, and I don't really kind of like shadow AI, but not really because we're all trying to do it. But I think there's a lot of agents people have built for themselves that nobody else knows about. And so I want to do a discovery session to figure out what is everybody using? How is everybody using it? What have you built that maybe you have for yourself that others could use, right? So I need to figure that all out. But then I also want to lead a problem solving workshop where I meet with each of the teams, understand their workflows, and then we figure out where we can have some quick wins with solving some minor problems with agents after I figure out what we've already maybe solved with agents and we can scale. And so I was kind of like, how do I even go about starting to put that all together? What questions do I need to make sure I ask to make sure I gather all the right information? And these articles reading were super helpful on the frameworks and the fundamentals, but I went into co-work and I pretty much said that. I said, this is what I want to do. This is the audience I'm looking to do. This is why I'm looking to do it. This is my goals. Help me put the framework together. And now kind of like what you're saying, it then has gone through this series of question asking and prompting. And do you want this to be a live workshop? Do you want it to be hybrid? Do you want it one session or multiple sessions? So it's asking me these questions and then it's building out and helping me create that framework and that structure that I just wasn't quite sure where to start. And I didn't want to trial and error it as we're going. I want to make sure I'm getting the most value out of it as quickly as possible. So that's been the most successful aha moment I've had this week.
Okay, so my aha moment was I wrote a white paper on an upcoming topic about practical AI and kind of how you deploy these things and kind of lessons that we've learned from customers and partners and all of the stuff that we've been talking about over the year, kind of put it into a white paper. And yeah, it was pretty long. So somebody said, that's not a white paper, Phil. And I was like, well, I'll turn it into an ebook. So then I put it into Claude and said, turn this into an ebook, turn it on brand, put diagrams in that I can suggest to people, create a package that I can share with my marketing, design, and content team so that they can review, edit, and create assets that responds to that, Figma layouts and stuff like this, and so on and so forth. You know, through the big old prompt with loads of research that was in there as well, and the white paper, I was able to create a 68-page ebook that we're hoping to launch pretty soon. I took it one step further because I said, look, there's a concept that I've been talking about, which is like defensible answers, right? So it's like, how do you create an answer or an action that isn't just, oh, well, that's good, the AI did this is great, but actually, how could you defend that if something went wrong? Like, how can you put this in front of a regulator and say, we're adhering to all the practices? And I said, I want to build like a calculator to figure this out, right? And I don't code. I do not code. Last time I code was in Visual Basic, right? That's before C.
You're aging yourself, man.
Way back in time, right? So I said, tell you what, can you just build me this calculator with this sum that I've like worked out, that will dynamically kind of cost and ROI the investment people make in our technology, right? And then it just went and did it, right? So it took all of that research and information and the ebook and everything like that, and it kept it on brand. It created an explainer page, it created a README, it created the HTML calculator, it then broke it down on how that calculator works. It had a spreadsheet that went along with it. It created everything that I asked. And I did it over like a couple of weekends and some few free time in there. And it did it because I had grounded my co-work engine in the data that I'd had for going back since I started using these tools. Every single conversation, I think there was like 1,600 conversations, and that's not 1,600 prompts, that's 1,600 conversations. So there's multiple different prompts in there. Too many. And then it created the grounded agent it created a grounded vault of knowledge that I could then give to the AI in order to deliver out on message on brand thing. Now I had to change things, and I had to like go in and like interfere with it. It asked me questions as well, like, you know, like, how do you want this, and who's the audience, and so on and so forth. But it really showed the power of these tools to take an idea that someone has and create a product from that idea. That can be shown to, and like across the business now, right, of how this can then benefit the rest of the organization, right? So more ways of engaging on our site, more engagement time, more better sales tools and assets to support sales further down the funnel, ebook, right? So like you know, like a more invested time read stuff, but can still be read by the AI. And that was the kind of aha moment for me recently, and it was really cool. I liked it, so we're gonna give it a go. So keep an eye out. It's a few more weeks yet away from seeing the light of day, but it will be coming out soon, and hopefully you can agree it's pretty impressive in terms of what you can spin out with this.
Let's clap for Phil and his authorship.
Oh well, wait, yeah.
Speaking of engagement, if you want to continue the conversation with us about AI, we do have a Discord channel that I think I'm pointing in the right direction up there. Scan the QR code and you can join us there. There's a whole section just for AI enthusiasts. You don't have to be a Progress customer to come and talk AI with us. We're just excited about the technology. Even me. But with that being said, everybody have a wonderful rest of your Friday and have a happy weekend. And we'll see you again on the first Friday of next month. Thank you.
And just to say, Kate, thank you very much. I know you've got very busy role at the moment. It's really good to have you. We'd love to get you on in. Let's give you a few months, right? But let's get you on again and see where you've moved on, what you're delivering, and things like that. Because I think it'll be really interesting to check in with you again. With what's
I would love to come back. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'm going to give a plug to everyone to go follow Kate Pendarvis on LinkedIn to see what she's up to, because I'm sure she's going to create some amazing insights these next few months. So great to keep up with you.
Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Awesome.
Right.
Cheers,
have a
everyone.
good day. Have a good weekend. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.